I see you. Hi, Diana. Hi, Dr. Oh, finally. This happens every time. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. It's
You
it's such
you can hear me okay, right?
yes, yes.
Okay, cool.
It's such a pleasure to have you joining us today, Team Hurricanes. We haven't done one of these IG lives in a while, but we are just in time for the holidays. So it was just a great idea to have you on here talking to us about how to stay healthy and fit and train for the DCC during the holidays.
hmm
Um, so just want to let everybody know, if you don't know already, which you should because Dr. Pearlman is big and she's a big part of Team Hurricanes DCC. She participates with Team Hurricanes Max Cycle. Uh, she is a dear friend, nutrition expert. I'd love to, actually, I'm going to have you introduce yourself a little bit more, Dr. Perlman, please. Um, if you can just welcome
Yeah.
her.
Okay, cool. So I'm Michelle Pearlman. I'm a gastroenterologist at the University of Miami, and I do a lot of GI, but more and more now with my practice, I'm doing mostly nutrition and weight management. That's really what I'm passionate about. And so I love talking about food. I love teaching people about food. I think, the fascinating thing about nutrition is that it doesn't matter if you're normal weight, underweight, or overweight. It doesn't matter if you have chronic liver disease or kidney disease or no medical problems. I truly believe that every living organism can really not just survive, but thrive from good nutrition. And the other cool thing about nutrition is that it's a very dynamic process. It's not static. So what you were able to eat when you were 10 is not the same stuff that you can eat when you're 20, 30, 40, and 50. And so as we age and we develop different medical conditions, or we're on medications, or we're less active, we have pregnancies, whatever it may be, nutrition really has to change with everything else.
That's excellent, Dr. Perlman. If you could tell me, I know that you are training for the DCC. Could you tell me a little bit about how you heard about the DCC and how long you've been participating for?
hmm So I was a gym rat most of my life. And when COVID obviously came and shut down the gyms, my stress release every single morning since undergrad was working out. It didn't matter what it was, I had to move my body in the morning. And so when the gym shut down, I started running outside, didn't really like it. I had to figure out how was I going to move my body on a daily basis without a gym. So I created my own little home gym, but that really didn't do the trick. And some of my patients actually, when I was talking with them, I found out that they were avid cyclists, and a bunch of my coworkers and friends were cycling. And so they really kind of planted that seed. And I actually started buying all the gear for cycling before I ever actually had the bike and soon realized how expensive this sport is. But I fell in love with it. And there was nothing more amazing than waking up early on a Saturday morning when there weren't many cars out during the heat of COVID and just riding on Key Biscayne. And it was my saving grace. So that's how I got started in biking. And when I met a lot of people through that, and then I got introduced to the folks at Max Cycle and Chris Pavone, and he said, Pearlman, you're signing up for the Century Ride, and he didn't really give me a chance to say no. So I literally went from 0 to 100 miles in about 8 months or so.
Wow, that's impressive, Dr. Perlman. And I know that on Team Hurricane social media, we've actually shared some footage from last year's DCC that was put together for you. Very impressive. So thank you so much. That sounds like Pavone. What I hear. Uh, well, with the holiday season approaching, many individuals may experience challenges making healthy choices and sticking to a restricted diet, as we all know. I know that there are a lot of unwanted stomach and gastrointestinal issues that are really would be something that would knock or anybody off of their course in an effort to train PCC. Can you let us know some helpful ways to make positive food choices that promote health during the
Yes, I think it's twofold in that the holidays obviously make it very challenging, but also the DCC is earlier this upcoming year. It's in February, so soon after the holidays, it's almost game time for the DCC. So you have to figure out, how do you navigate not just one holiday like Halloween or Thanksgiving, it's the whole holiday season. And it's not just one day, even though it may just be one holiday usually has multiple parties and gatherings, and there's always junk food at work and things like that. So not only is it the holiday season, but also training, particularly for an endurance event, can be very challenging. And so yeah, there's a lot of nuances there. I think in general, for kind of general healthy eating over the holidays, the average person consumes over 3,000 calories just in one gathering, which is insanity, because most people don't even need 2,000 calories in a day. Now, if you're training for an event and you're, riding your bike for 6 hours, then of course you need to do extra calories. But let's be honest, most people aren't doing that on a daily basis. So what I tell people is, a lot of folks see me for weight loss. What I tell most people is, if you can at least maintain your weight over the holiday season, you are 10 steps ahead of the game, because the majority of people gain about 10 pounds. So if you can go into 2022 at the same weight you are now, you're golden. But I think part of the issue that people have, and I struggled with it myself when you're training for an endurance event, is often when you're expending all those calories, you end up actually having more cravings and more hunger. And so often I'll tell myself, oh, well, I just got on the bike for 4 hours. I'm going to go eat a ton of calories. And so you can actually do a lot of damage that way. And so you always want to go into it with a strategy. So yeah, you'll be eating a little bit more as you're training for the DCC, but again, within reason. Most people, when they train for it, are not doing 4 hours a day on the bike. At least for me, I was doing my longer rides on the weekend, and then, shorter spurts during the week. So what are some of your strategies, Nanette, on eating over the holidays? Anything? Like, do you just kind of go with the flow and see how things go, or?
Typically I do make better food choices. I will make a healthy dish and bring it to any gathering to make it a little easier for me to stick to those type of foods, because you never know what to expect. That's a great question. How about you though? Like, what do you
Yeah.
do?
No, that's actually one of my favorites. So whenever I go to a gathering, I always bring something. I mean, a lot of my friends, they'll say, oh, no, don't bring anything. I have plenty. But like, I usually know that for the most part, they're not going to have that many healthy options. And so I will usually bring either like a big like fruit platter, or one of my go-tos is just like a big veggie platter. So whether it's like baby carrots and celery and cucumber, bell peppers, a lot of stores you can get them just pre-made on a big platter, or you can get like a nice platter. Maybe that's part of the gift, is getting something from Home Goods or something, and then kind of dicing up the veggies yourself, and then either making or getting pre-made like guacamole or hummus. Those are really nice options, because that fiber is going to help keep you full. So you'll end up getting good nutrients, a lot of good fiber, and you'll get full so that you're less likely to overindulge on the other stuff. And you're getting a little bit of natural sodium in some of that, but spending a lot of calories on the chips and the salsa and the salted nuts and everything, those calories add up fast. And all that salt actually stimulates thirst. And so what happens is you're not only getting the salt and the calories from whatever snack you're eating on that's covered in salt, but it's stimulating thirst. So you end up consuming tons of calories in those sugar-laden beverages, like the juices and the sodas, and particularly the alcohol over the holiday season.
And speaking of, I know that during holidays, alcohol is just, I mean, people look forward to a special drink or something like that. How
Mm-hmm.
would you advise somebody on how to stick to their diet? And not, I hate calling it a diet, it's a
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle. What tips can you offer people that actually do want to partake, don't really want to go overboard?
Yeah,
Um,
we hear this term moderation all the time, like ad nauseum. But it really is true. I mean, particularly as we get older, we can't have a whole handle of vodka and feel good the next day. Like, that's just not going to happen. Now, a lot of people will come to me for GI symptoms and say, Doc, I had terrible heartburn, but yeah, I did go out last night and I had 4 margaritas. Well, yeah, you're 50 years old, you're not 20 anymore. You drank a bunch at night, and often with the margaritas, you're not eating celery. You're often eating a lot of other calorie dense foods. And so with one often comes a couple other not so great things. And it's also a lot of late night festivities. So if you're dumping a ton of calories into your stomach at night and then lying down to relax, it's a mechanical thing. Whatever's sitting in your stomach is going to reflux up into your throat, and you're going to feel awful the next day. So a lot of times people will say, Doc, what's wrong with my body? But for most people, I look right back at them and say, there's actually nothing wrong with your body. It's what's wrong with your food choices. Your body is trying to protect you. It's trying to tell you, maybe we need to change our eating behaviors. And some people are willing to listen to that and others are not. But particularly when you're training for the DCC, the last thing you want to do is drink a ton of alcohol, get dehydrated, not feel your best, and then start out dehydrated and go for a four-hour ride. That's really setting yourself up for not success.
Oh, and that's the worst feeling ever. Oh, feeling dehydrated and
Yeah.
having to sports activity.
So yeah, one of my tricks is if you're going to have alcohol, then don't have it with soda. Like at least maybe just have it maybe with some sparkling water or something. So you have the alcohol, but maybe minimize in the mixer, minimize the extra calories and sugar in your mixer. Also, for every one alcoholic beverage you have, always follow it with a glass of water. So that will at least help you maintain your hydration.
Hydration is key. And what about obviously the retaining of water by salt. Can you tell us a little bit more about that element of things? And I know that you mentioned hydration and how that is so bad, but can you tell us a little bit about why it's so bad?
Yeah, of course. So we use the term salt. It's a very generic term. It just means that there's a positively charged ion and a negatively charged ion put together. So you have a lot of salts like magnesium salt, some of these laxative preparations. The one when we are talking about salt that we're eating, edible salt, we often are talking about table salt. So table salt is basically sodium chloride. There's a lot of marketing involved in like these healthy salts, right? Like the Himalayan or the pink salt, the sea salt, the kosher salt. Everyone tells me, oh no, I don't add table salt. I use the pink stuff. That's better for me, right, Doc? It's basically all the same. It's, there's some nuances in if there's iodide in it or sort of what minerals and elements are in them, depending on where that salt actually came from. But for the most part, the majority of the substance that comes from any of these salts is sodium chloride. And why does that matter? Well, a lot of people will say, okay, well, it's calorie free. I'm flavoring my food and it's calorie free. So yeah, salt or sodium is calorie free, but we use it as a preservative, right? It's in a lot of chicken and canned foods as a preservative, but it also improves the palatability of products. And there's a fine line between enjoying your food and really enjoying your food, right? So it's a true thing that you can't just have one chip because it tastes too darn good. So you have the whole bag. And so food manufacturers and restaurants do that for a reason. They add a ton of sodium to it, not just to preserve it, but to make you eat the entire thing. And that way you buy a lot more. Restaurants do it because although they are forking over the bill, I guess you could say, for the chips and salsa they're not charging you for, they're making that money back in the drinks that you order because of that increased thirst. So there's a method to the madness into why there's so much sodium added to food.
Wow. That's so interesting. I didn't know that about the chicken stuff, but that makes sense. And I'm sure with the bread and everything too, but I mean, there's always a method to something. Super
Yeah, no,
interesting.
and when it comes to training for an endurance event, so we do need. I don't want to make people think that sodium is the enemy. We do need some sodium to maintain normal sodium levels in our blood. So there is a critical amount that we do need. But most people consume, close to twice that our body actually requires. So the American Heart Association recommends for most people around 2,300 milligrams of sodium or less per day. Most people are eating way more than that. So like one bowl of like ramen noodles has about 1,500 milligrams. So about 2/3 of what you're supposed to have an entire day just in one soup. So soups from Panera or other places, very high in sodium. Canned foods, whether it's tuna or canned vegetables or baked beans, um, very, very, even bread, so bread and deli, all of that stuff is very high in sodium. So it's not that we should be completely sodium free. It's that most people are over consuming. And that leads to water retention, increased risk of high blood pressure. And why does that matter? Well, it is a major risk factor for stroke and heart disease.
My goodness. It's such a problem.
Yeah.
Um, so that's so good to know. And about the special salts, that too, that was something that I had a question about. So I'm so glad you mentioned it there. The Himalayan salt. You hear all these marketing things. I mean, a lot of them are marketing, but it's just good to know all these things. How about I know, and then we'll tap into a little bit more holiday stuff. And any questions that anybody have, feel free to comment in the comments below, and we'll definitely love to have Dr. Pearlman questions out there. But food and inflammation. Okay, Dr. Pearlman, I hear all the time like the what is that? Gun 3 diet, base, all the anti-inflammation. There is something to that, and it's like all over. You see it everywhere. Can you tell us a little bit more about how inflammation you stomach issues and overall health, all of that?
Yeah, so I think, honestly, I think we probably overcomplicate things a bit. I mean, everyone is trying to sell a brand or a product or some sort of a program. I think at the end of the day, if most of us ate like we did when we were cavemen, where we had some fruit, vegetables, whole grains, that's where the majority of our calories came from. We can still eat animal products, but you can't eat the whole darn rotisserie chicken. Like that's way more than a serving. So I think part of the issue is our portions are out of control. People often think that a 16-ounce steak is a normal portion, when in fact 3 ounces is actually normal. People will have, half a container of nuts from Costco when it's really like 14 almonds is a serving. So too much of a good thing can still be a bad thing. When you overconsume excessive amounts of fiber, like if you get an acai berry bowl and you get granola plus nuts plus seeds, plus a million different fruits, even though there's a lot of nutrients in there, all that fiber can definitely cause some people GI symptoms. So I think at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. I'm not a huge fan of eliminating big food groups. The last thing I want to do is tell people you need to be soy free, dairy free, gluten free, this free, that free, because then people start eating cardboard and they develop fear of eating, and it can lead to very disordered eating habits. So the biggest thing is, how do we eliminate the things that clearly our body doesn't need? And that's going to be your added sugar. So sugar is pro-inflammatory. It doesn't mean we need to be completely sugar-free. It just means we need to choose natural sugar options. So fruit, we get natural sugar from vegetables, carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates like oatmeal and things like that. Those carbohydrates are basically made up of small sugar molecules. So at the end of the day, your body digests those carbohydrates and turns it into sugar. So even if you're not eating bread, rice, or pasta, but you're eating some fruit and vegetables, you're still getting plenty of carbs and plenty of sugar, even though you're not eating tons of complex carbs. So it's really, instead of focusing so much on what to eat, most of us need to start with eliminating things that are clearly causing inflammation. So limit or avoid your pro-inflammatory foods. That's going to be, for most people, a lot of the added sugars, trans and saturated fats. And then based on what your food preferences are and things like that, start adding more of these anti-inflammatory foods.
Excellent, excellent. And we love it when you share your shopping list for healthy foods. Can you give us a few um, shopping tips, and also, or if you want to take us through some food choices for just living healthy? And
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it's just training for the DCC. That's just, it really should be a lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. So people ask me all the time, what am I training for? Like, what sort of race or whatever. And I just look back at them and I say, I'm training for life, right? because every day is a new challenge. And I truly believe that if you want to feel well, you have to eat well. So it doesn't matter if you're training for an event or you just want to be, the best version of yourself. It's not just a 30-day meal plan. It is understanding what foods that you eat that allow you to be your best, feel your best, have the most energy. And again, that's going to change from a day-to-day basis. And it's going to change as you are training for certain events. So again, if you are training for an endurance event, you're going to end up adding more calories, probably more complex carbs than you otherwise would. But a lot of people focus so much on what am I supposed to eat the night before? What am I going to eat during the event? But what's equally important and maybe more important is what are you eating the other 6.5 days of the week? How are you managing your stress? How are you recovering? That is probably what's more important. And so, having a plan is really, really key, not just when you're training, but even in the off season, just, from a day-to-day basis. So some of my key things is, if you want to write down a grocery list or put it in your phone, always go in with a plan. Grocery stores are very, very smart. They put a lot of those little sneaky things like the candy and the bars, all of that's right at the counter. It used to be that I would tell people to shop the perimeter, but they've even caught on to that. And you have all the baked goods around the perimeter. So you're getting more and more processed stuff actually around the perimeter. You can't even walk into a Whole Foods or some of these higher end places without being bombarded by these organic brownies before you even get to the shopping cart. So always having your eye on the prize, going in with a plan, because there's going to be temptation. And never go to the grocery store hungry
It was just
either.
read my mind. I'm like, never. Those are some great tips. What are your go-tos, or I know that you mentioned some holiday food options. What
Mm-hmm.
Give us some. I know you cook a lot. I mean, I've seen you cooking online and for events. Can you give us some examples, or maybe what's a holiday recipe? Do you have like one that you're kind of eyeing or considering aside from, like a holiday, aside from like fruits and vegetables? Yeah. But if you have to bring something holiday-ish, what would that look
Mm-hmm.
like?
I don't know. I mean, I love vegetables. And so, like, when I spend time with my parents, my mom is a big fan of roasting a ton of vegetables. So she'll put like sliced sweet potatoes and parsnips and carrots and onions and just in a huge like Pyrex baking dish and just put it in the oven. I mean, that to me tastes amazing. And then you can have it with whether it's turkey or chicken or salmon, either on the grill or baked. I mean, that stuff is kind of like the staples. So what I tell people is some of the tricks when you're going to an event,
Oh no.
hydrated during the day. Make sure you kind of limit the calories during the day to allow yourself a little bit extra when you go to an event. And then my rule of thumb is trying to limit your plates. So for instance, you get one plate for appetizers, one plate for your entree, and one plate for dessert. Whatever fits on that plate, that's what you get. And so it really forces you to say, to pick and choose and be like, well, do I really want that? It's not really going to fit on the plate. I'm going to have to not have something else. Or, it allows you to just have a little bit of everything and not a lot of everything.
Right.
So minimizing your plate, having one per, and then you can kind of have a little bit of everything. Other really good options, and this isn't necessarily for the holiday, this is just healthy eating in general, is these little snack packs that I'm a huge fan of. Hummus and guacamole, there are a decent amount of calories in these things because there's a decent amount of fat, so it adds up. Most people with the hummus or guac are going to have this whole serving on just one piece of celery. So those calories add up. So these little snack packs really teach you what a true serving is. So I'll have these, I'll have it with like cauliflower florets or baby carrots or celery. These are really easy to take to work. So I really like these. Your little snack packs of nuts are amazing. This truly teaches you what a serving is. It ain't much, but the calories add up. But it really forces you to actually chew your food and not inhale it, which is very important. We're so used to doing a million things at once where most people don't realize that it takes your body about 20 minutes after you eat for your stomach and intestines to send signals to your brain to tell you that you're full. most people have to shovel food in their mouth within 5 minutes, and they overeat because they don't realize they're actually full. So that's another tip, is when you're dining out or at a gathering, really do your best to chew each bite until you can no longer feel the texture of the food in your mouth, and you'll end up actually eating a lot less.
That's great. No, that is so key, and that is so true. Your body does take a while to register, and I've actually experienced that myself. What for our parents out there that participate in the DCC, and how do you have some tips on how parents can establish a healthy eating lifestyle for their children? Anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you don't want to be too strict, because then a lot of kids are, if they're at school or they go to a friend's house, they will end up overindulging because they feel like they're missing out on all the good things in life when they're at home. So you don't want to be too strict. But I think the sooner that we can teach kids what real healthy eating is about, then that will really carry them through. I only see adults in clinic, but one of my most kind of exciting things that I'm able to do is, if I can teach the parents healthy eating strategies, then they will then teach their children, and then their children are going to just fly, and it's really going to take them forward. So I think a lot of it is, I know we feel like we need to have junk food at home to, celebrate things and encourage people, encourage our kids with when they behave, in a positive manner or whatnot. But I think the more that you can reward your children with, again, like natural sugars, whether it's even, dried fruit is fine, or fresh fruit, little things like that, or homemade popsicles where you can make a smoothie with frozen fruit and actually put it in your own little popsicle mold and give it to them instead of a lot of these processed popsicles, then that will teach them what actual sugar tastes like. The problem is that most of the food that we give to kids as snacks or whatnot has so much high fructose corn syrup in it, or a lot of these sweeteners, that it's 300 to 600 times sweeter than regular sugar. So we're teaching kids with these concentrated juices from a very young age what we think is normal eating and normal sugar loads, and it's actually way beyond that. So really trying to, from a young age, the natural sugars would be your best bet.
And really training that palate, because it really is. You can cut back. I've done it with sugar and salt, where you start cutting back, and then you just don't want that anymore. You don't want that much of the sugar, the sweetness, what have you. So that's all very
Yeah.
good. And I know that there's so much. I have like 2 more questions, but we literally have like 3 more questions. And in the meantime, thank you, Tyler. He said can't say, but wanted to say you guys rock, and he shouted you out. Anybody have questions, please feel free to jot them down below. Dr. Pearlman, can you tell us a little bit about the importance of managing leftovers? There's some stuff
Yeah.
I say that I never really heard anybody else say before. So if you could please fill us in about the importance of managing leftovers, especially during the holidays.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that you can repurpose some of the food. I think once you make it, then freeze it right after. And that way you can put it like in little Tupperware containers and actually meal prep for the rest of the week. So you don't want to necessarily have it all go to waste, but there's nothing wrong with freezing the food and repurposing it. Other things that you can do, like if you, let's say, had oven roasted turkey or something, or chicken or salmon, you can then put it in the air fryer. And so it can end up having like a different texture. So it tastes a little different. You can use things like coconut flour or almond flour or nutritional yeast, and use that kind of as a breading to make it crispy, with a little bit of like an egg as a binder. So there's little things that you can do as far as changing the seasoning or changing the food preparation to give it a different texture so it tastes a little bit different, but it's all coming from the same thing. If you're, let's say, putting, chicken or something in an Instant Pot, then using that broth for soup later on is also a really good tool. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can repurpose leftovers, but there's nothing wrong with freezing it. But what you don't want to do is have the leftovers have in the fridge for a week and then freeze it, because by then it's probably already gone rancid.
Yeah, that in your body. Oh, you have a question. and I think everybody can see it. This is so cool with Instagram. What is your Chris Pavone, our favorite, one of our favorite cycle. What's your go-to snack during a 100-mile ride, Pearlman?
You know, I've experimented a lot with this, and I think in general, when you're riding over 2 hours, yeah, your body absolutely needs those simple carbohydrates. I think part of the issue is a lot of people just start slamming down tons of calories, but the issue is that your body can only process so many carbs per minute. And so if you end up eating 200 grams of carbs in an hour, you're going to end up getting GI upset because there's only so much your intestine can digest. So when you are biking, you absolutely need to choose simple carbohydrates. You want to limit the fat, and you don't need a ton of protein. The more fiber you have in there, the more fat you have in there, the more your body has to digest. And when you're biking or doing any sort of endurance event, you need your blood shunted to your muscles. When you start feeding your gut too much where it needs to start digesting it and using a lot of energy, your blood is now going from your muscles to your gut. And then people can have issues. And so it ends up then preferentially going to your muscles. You get poor blood flow to your gut, and that can cause a lot of GI symptoms. So again, you want to choose simple sugars. I've experimented a lot. For me in general, I tend to go for the less processed stuff. So things just like honey, the little honey sticks, or like a small banana with just a little bit of like peanut butter or something. Those have been my go-tos. I'm not a fan of a lot of the gels and everything. Some people get GI upset with some of the ingredients like the maltodextrin.
Oh, there's so much that I'm personally learning about the whole PI world. Wow. And it makes such a difference and in your energy. Quick question, and then I know we have to I know that time is almost up, but when people eat and they start getting cold and all of that, I've noticed people are like they getting their temperature changes. Can you explain why that happens? I know that I hear like where you eat, I mean, your body's digesting. I know that you mentioned how the blood goes to your muscles, if you eat only a certain is there a reason why? Is it if people eat more, their temperature changes in the body? That,
So you have thermogenesis when you're eating, so you do burn calories by digesting food. Most people aren't going to actually feel that. Um, I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question. Most people shouldn't get major temperature fluctuations after eating, unless you have some sort of systemic response where you're having some sort of an allergy where people may feel warm or they get hives or itchy throat. That would be more of a systemic response like a food allergy. But in general, you're going to get some thermogenesis from eating and digestion, but you shouldn't actually feel that per se.
no, that's good to know because I mean, I honestly I've heard people say it, and I was always curious, so that was my question to ask. Well, Dr. Perlman, I can't, I knew this time would fly by, and I know that our audience would probably want to hear more about what you have to say and all the wisdom that you have to share with us. If anybody else has any questions or feel free to let us know, and we'd love to invite Dr. Perlman to come back in the future and share some more tips with us. Bye, Dolphins Challenge Cancer. They're chiming in. Thank you both. We love these tips. We're big fans of the Dolphins Challenge Cancer, and Dr. Perlman, we're big fans of yours. Thank you for your time, for all this information. Is there any last comment that you would like to say to our audience today?
No, I think really the biggest thing is in order for you to feel well, you need to eat well, not just today, but every day. And no one's perfect. It's all about making progress and not perfection. So one day at a time.
Yes, at a time. And well, we look forward to seeing you at the Dolphins Challenge Cancer on Saturday, February 26th. We know that you're training and we're all getting ready for this awesome event. Friends from Team Hurricanes, please know that if you sign up by December 1st, you get $50 towards. And I know the Dolphins Challenge Cancer has their own fundraising incentives as well. So if you haven't checked it out yet, if you haven't registered for the DCC, What are you waiting for? Let's do this. So, Dr. Pearlman, thank you. And we all wish you a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye bye.